This project idea wouldn't leave me as I was rewatching Good Omens Season 1, excitedly awaiting the premiere of Season 2, and remembering just how much I love these characters. It was an interesting intersection between this show and my recent Edwardian dressmaking interests. Suddenly, as I flipped through my Voice of Fashion drafting book, the models looked better with sunglasses. And that pretty much sealed the deal. I knew I had to. And of course, because this project needed some hefty amounts of glee to get me through it, I ordered the glasses, which I was quite excited about. Drafting the pattern was fairly straightforward, more of which you can see in my last video where I made a dreamy summer dress perfect for engaging with dahlias, the highly intricate flowers in my garden that quite frankly demanded it. I'm serious, they wouldn't stop. After selecting this dress in particular, all I could see was a slightly sheer, dark, embroidered dot fabric, which I just happened to find in heaps for a good price on ye old internets. And after the usual time on the floor measuring, marking, and doing the pigeon pose, it was time to begin assembly. The first step, of course, was getting more tailor's wax, because there are a ton of pleats in this waist, or by today's standards, the bodice. It was a tricky thing for Edwardians to do, using the word waist for something that fits you above the waist, and was actually a mistake during a particularly boring and sleepy day. The tailor who originally made the mess up desperately needed to keep his job, however, and hence this popular vocabulary began without anyone being the wiser for centuries. Pinning the pattern pieces on the folded fabric, I cut them out simply enough using my pinking shears for no other reason but it reduces fraying, and I absolutely love them. Deciphering what center of tuck meant proved to be confusing. Is the line the center? Is the space between the line the center? Yet another tricky bit inserted by a rather sleepy or maybe devilish Edwardian tailor. Or so I imagine. But seeing as I didn't want enormous tucks, I decided to go with the space between the lines as the right choice, and luckily it was. I used my bone bodkin from Burnley and Trowbridge to poke holes in the pattern at the top and bottoms of the pleat lines, then marked through the holes with the wax, and then connected the dots using my wax and the straight edge ruler. What worked best for me was pinning the lines on the right side with 3 perpendicular pins, sewing them down one at a time, which proved to be a highly time-consuming task. How did people do this? I would not be able to see. Oh my lord. How am I supposed to indicate to you how I'm sewing? Take my word for it. This is working out, and also I love this weight. It's so pretty, and it's cotton. Like, it's cotton, so it's not gonna, like, you know, it's gonna actually listen to me sometimes. And now for some magic, wherein ironing makes the wax go away. Here we have one front and 2 fronts. And now a ton of back pleats. Pleats? Tucks? I don't know. More magic! They're done! So quickly. It took so much time. Then it was time to do insertion on the yoke, which we can see in the sketch here. Here's my best attempt at explaining insertion using black fabric and black lace, so probably not particularly visible. But let's try anyway. Step 1. Sew the lace to your fabric where you want it. Step 2. Cut down the middle of the lace on the backing fabric. Step 3. Iron back the seam allowances you just cut. Step 4. Top stitch the seam allowance close to the fold. Step 5. Trim back the seam allowance to your top stitch seam as best you can. Step 6 is optional, but you can always get excited when you're done. Yay! Next it was time to sew all the pleated bits to the yoke. Then it was time to connect the front to the back under the arm with the underarm gore. Right, so we have all of the pieces sewn together, and there are a couple of things that I never trust in patterns because they're always so different, right? First is the armholes. The armholes are always so small, and I understand that that's probably just like a thing they did. I'm gonna have to go in and cut down a bit. The other thing that is often really tricky is the neckline. I tried it on myself and it's actually doing okay, but we'll see how the collar. I am dubious. So far though, really loving it. Loving it. As I suspected, the collar did take some extending and shortening to finally land on a shape I was okay with. And then I began the overlaid tucks on it, which I pinned and sewed in the shape of the curve. Just a quick try on and whatever that is. For the sleeves, the instructions read, the goods is tucked for the upper sleeve portion, is basted to the sleeves, and the undersleeve cut away beneath the tucks. So if I am interpreting this correctly, I believe it's the same as the insertion that I just did with the lace. This also meant I was going to need to do way more tucks. So with that, I started to cut 3-inch strips out of the fabric with my pinking shears, pleating them by the same measurements and marking techniques I used on the bodice. It only goes to show that sometimes things are just long and annoying and not necessarily difficult. It's been 89 years, and I still have so much pleating to go. After pleating enough length to fit the first row on the sleeve, I then marked a guideline and began to stitch it down. I have solved the issue for how to see while sewing with black thread on black fabric. Booklight! I have my sewing machine propped up on a book and a booklight, but it's working, and that's pretty much all I care about. Thank you. Time to test this theory! After pleating a length long enough to fit the first row on the sleeve, I stitched it down, trimmed it to the sleeve shape, and began trimming away the backing. And once I was fairly sure this is what I needed to do, I added more layers of insertion and tucks to each sleeve and attached them to the rest of the waist, none of which I have any footage of. Sorry. It's actually starting to look like a real shirtwaist. Then I tried it on again, this time with the corset. Welcome back! I got this belt. The only thing is like, this always happens to me, like the sleeves always end up being, like the shoulder always ends up being too short. This is what happens when you don't make a mock-up, my friends. The rest of it is awesome. Okay? Just, like, so cool. I'm so excited. Okay, time to make the skirt. Edwardian skirt making was yet another project headed by a particular demon from the underworld, wherein the secret goal was to either make a pattern so enormous and unwieldy that you needed to tape various pieces of paper together in order to make it, or have so many gores that you were absolutely sick of sewing before you'd even began. In Amber's case, it was the former. After reminding myself that piecing is period, it was time to sew the skirt together. For the waistband, I cut a 36-inch by 3-inch strip of fabric, which gives me enough to overlap in the back where the opening is. Can you see this? Like, I was trying to sew the skirt hook on here, and I sewed the whole skirt closed. Here you can see the reams of paper I used to elevate the dress form. And now more time on the floor, pinning all the way around so that we can hem. I never realized how useful windows are until I started trying to sew black fabric with black thread. Seriously. After doing all of the hemming, we are finally finished. Time to try it on, see how it hangs. I think it's going to be the perfect length. And now we are done! We're done! I'm just kidding. We have a bunch of tucks and insertion lace left to do on the skirt. I am going to spare you, however, the tedious process of tucking enough fabric for a skirt circumference. Just know that it took forever and involved several choice words on repeat. For those of you who are curious, here is a sped-up version of the process wherein I realized that a rounded hem meant I had no choice but to place the trim on the skirt and pleat into the curve, mostly by, well, guessing. I have given up on the marking, and at this point, I'm just winging it. I'm winging it because there's a curve on this skirt, so we're doing it. We're gonna wing it. I wish it had gone this fast in real life. Okay, now we are done, which is good because I was starting to lose it. What actually is good and what is actually evil? The idea that both sides merely want to win at Armageddon but don't even know why is probably one of the best parts of the entire show. Crowley and Aziraphale, both willing to admit that maybe this isn't the best idea, are actually thinking for themselves while managing the various demands of their superiors. While we might at first see Crowley as selfish, he simply wants autonomy and the right to be himself, and not be controlled by a bunch of entities that don't really understand him or understand why that would matter. We notice throughout the show that there really isn't a solid delineation between the actions of angel and demon, and that their choices are fallible with no real winning. That good or evil seems to be something far more than a perception or category, and the entire series challenges us to think for ourselves and what we believe about others. Throwing out the assumptions that we might have wanted to make, the audience both simultaneously knows everything and realizes they don't. After all, how could a demon save the world? How could a demon have good intentions? How could Crowley care for his friend, drive a Bentley through the hellish fires of his own creation, and grow and change through the challenges he faces? And yet he does. Perhaps like Crowley, we are not just light or darkness, but an ever-changing combination of both, fueled by our fears, our hopes, and our challenges. I loved this project. It sparked my creativity and expression in new ways, and I hope you loved it too. And now that I'm done, I can finally watch season 2. Take care, salty possums.